Storm Watch at the Weather Channel. I'm Paul Emick. Still a pretty stormy night. I'd say that pretty much extreme around parts of Texas, including around Parker. Seem to be especially hard hit with incredible wind, some 60-mile-an-hour gusts, including a lot of 3/4-inch hail being reported in parts of Texas. Well, we'll discuss that during this Storm Watch. We'll also talk about the tropics with our tropical update. That's where we'll begin with this Storm Watch. Let's have a look first of all across the Atlantic, bits of the Caribbean, also the Gulf of Mexico. Things are pretty quiet. What at one point in time was George scooted off the coast on Thursday and is now kind of being taken up with a part of that front, so it too is on the move. Elsewhere, a little sinking air, keeping things pretty quiet. A little subsidence going on across the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Bottom line, that means not a real active time, not much happening here. Things are pretty quiet. Elsewhere, though, watching along the Intertropical Convergence Zone, the ITCZ as it's called, westerly winds have been sinking pretty far south in the 12 to 13 degree range, that far south, so they're kind of blowing the winds back here a bit. Now, to get things going aloft, you need to have kind of a tranquil environment. You need to have that high pressure aloft for a tropical system to survive and actually to increase. You have to have a batch of high pressure aloft for a pre-existing spin of some sort, some type of disturbance to get beneath and begin to intensify. But if you have shearing or a trough aloft, that works to kind of impede development and let it really happen. If you look real close, actually we can look even closer than this, a close-up image, you can see kind of the clouds beneath the shear. They're trying to struggle on and make it on toward the west while the westerly winds are blowing this way. That's what they call the westerlies, and that has worked to kind of, you see, kind of shear, kind of hinder the development of these situations here, these systems. Looking at a couple of spots with a great interest, though, just looking here, but nothing really showing any grand promise right now. Watching a couple of areas of disturbed weather. Things are actually incredibly tranquil across the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, too. And throughout most of the Atlantic, things are pretty quiet right now. Focus our attention now into the Pacific. We have really not much happening here either. There was a system we had been keeping a real close eye on in case it had gone on to become Tropical Storm K. That will not happen with this unless some type of redevelopment would occur. Last position from the final advisory at 8 o'clock Pacific time. Sustained winds 35 miles per hour, moving west at 105 miles to the south at Cabo San Lucas. That's area of low pressure, that L right there. The convection kind of flattened after a bit for the day. You can see it kind of promising at one point, looked like it may have been something. Convection kind of gone, just a broad area of low pressure now. And again, that will be the last advisory unless some sort of regeneration could occur in this region. It's pretty quiet across the Atlantic. A couple of areas of interest we're just watching, but really nothing showing great promise presently. Also, in the Gulf and the Caribbean, not much happening. In the Pacific, a very quiet time now that we're dealing with one last classified tropical depression and no typhoons or hurricanes to talk about either across the Pacific. Here's the happenings with current weather. Right now in the northwest, we have a few showers. We have some rain, too, in parts of Montana. Rainy night around Chicago. If you have plans to hit the town, you're dealing with it, and you will be. Milwaukee, even Minneapolis, a little rain, especially on the south side. Detroit, Toledo, we're wet. But the real problems persist with some heavy-duty soaking rains in the parts of Arkansas and the risk of additional severe weather, especially in the parts of Texas. Right through this region, that could be the hardest hit area with the risk of severe weather lingering, as you can see from our graphic here, between now and noon. Our system is very slow to move, a little disturbance here, but it's going to move just enough to maybe bring at least a strong storm risk onto portions of Mississippi and even like around Memphis, Tennessee. Here's the happenings tonight. Little ground clutter there in parts of Oklahoma. That's not the real thing. On toward Tulsa, you had the real thing this morning. It's kind of faded away, not much in the way of rain. Heavier soaking rains now moving into portions of Arkansas. Little Rock, we can expect more of this tonight. Parts of Oklahoma and around Dallas Metro, we've dealt with it pretty hard tonight. I mentioned around Parker. Had incredible winds in the 60-mile-an-hour range easily. Many spots picked that up. Also 3/4-inch hail, some wind damage being reported. Now, presently, we still have a tornado watch in effect. You can look there and see the red shading. And look at this spot right there, indicating from the legend. Tornado watch means there's a risk of tornadoes in and around this watch area. Here's a close-up vantage point. Little radar junk kind of popping up here and there in this image, but like right through there. But you can still easily see Fort Worth on through Dallas. We're getting some pretty hefty winds, but right through here, this line is kind of a concern, too. These have been hail producers, these cells have. Also some pretty strong winds. Hang on, could see some real rough weather when these things come by. We do have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings in effect around Dallas Metro, as you can see from the information crawling across the bottom of your screen there. Also in Arkansas, I mentioned the soaking rains. Do have a few storms. You can see that cell there. Again, could be pretty windy through here, but a lot of soaking rain further north and in toward Little Rock shortly. Chicagoland, our night on the town has been dampened a bit by the dampening. Also a little wet into western Kentucky out around Kentucky Lake for a good weekend, or southern Illinois. Showery. Chicagoland, we're built to stay wet here for most of the weekend out around Lakeshore Drive. Not the most promising weekend we've seen in some time. Here's a look at the big picture of where we're heading into our Saturday. We want to talk a bit more about this. We'll get you really a lot of specifics on the forecast for Saturday. Also talk more about tonight's stormy weather around Dallas on the way next in Weather Center.
It's a bleak weekend picture for parts of the Midwest. Find out where wind chills and rain could affect your plans. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
What are you looking at?
Oh, Kurt's still steamed over crab delights. See, no one wants him when they can have real seafood with the great taste of crab and none of the work.
Louis Kemp, I'll fillet you.